most people think the morning is just a routine, something to survive, something to rush through, in inconvenient standing between you and your real day. But the morning is not a warm up. It is not a rehearsal. It is not disposable time. The morning is the foundation. It is the foundation that's shaky. The entire structure of your day will lean, crack, and eventually collapse under pressure. Think about it. Before you speak to anyone, before the world places its demands on you, before distractions compete for your attention, there is a brief window where your mind is still impressionable, still quiet, still waiting for direction. That window is power, raw, unclaimed power. And too many people waste it by surrendering to habit instead of intention. They wake up and immediately reach for noise, messages, notifications, opinions, problems. They let the outside world flood their mental space before they've even claimed ownership of their own thoughts. And from that moment on, they spend the day reacting instead of leading, responding instead of creating, directing. But imagine something different. Imagine waking up with a sense of command, not frantic, not rushed, just deliberate. A moment where you decide before anything else who you are going to be for the next 16 hours, not based on mood, not based on convenience, based on choice. Because whether you acknowledge it or not, every morning you cast a vote for the kind of person you are becoming. When you hit snooze again, you cast a vote. When you avoid the effort you promise yourself, you cast a vote. When you start the day distracted, scattered, hesitant, you cast a vote. And the outcome of your life is nothing more than the accumulation of those daily decisions. People love to talk about big goals, big dreams, big transformations, but greatness rarely announces itself with fireworks. It shows up quietly, disguised as ordinary discipline, disguised as small, consistent acts of self-respect, disguised as a decision to rise with purpose when it would be easier not to proper purpose, when it would be easier not to, when your morning is not about perfection, it is about direction. It is about refusing to start your day accidentally. And when you stand up with clarity, you send a message not to the world, but to yourself. You declare that your time has value, that your energy has value, that your life is not something to drift through, but something to actively shape. That message matters more than most people realize, because the mind is always listening, always recording patterns, always building identity from repeated behavior. If your mornings are chaotic, your mind learns chaos. If mornings are passive, your mind learns passivity. If your mornings are intentional, your mind learns control. Momentum begins the moment you act with purpose. And momentum begins the moment you act with purpose. And momentum, once established, becomes your ally. It carries you forward. It reduces resistance. It transforms effort into rhythm. But momentum does not magically appear at noon. It is born in the earliest decisions of your day, in how you rise, in how you think, in how you speak to yourself when no one else is around. Understand this clearly. The morning is where you either reinforce weakness or rehearse strengths. Then it's where you either negotiate with excuses or assert authority over them. You don't need dramatic gestures. You don't need some cinematic routine. You need consistency, a simple, unwavering standard, a refusal to let comfort dictate your direction. Because comfort is persuasive, it whispers persuasive, it sounds reasonable. It tells you that one delay doesn't matter, that one shortcut is harmless, that one lazy morning is insignificant. But the morning never exists in isolation. The morning never exists in isolation. It echoes. It sets a psychological tone that follows you into every interaction, every decision, every challenge that waits ahead. When you begin with intention, you walk into the day differently. Your posture changes. In your house, your focus sharpens, your tolerance for distraction weakens, you carry an internal certainty that you are not merely responding to events, but shaping them in your house. It is there, and there will be mornings when even the smallest task feels heavy, when your mind searches for reasons to delay, when your body resists movement as if effort itself were the enemy. That contrast is part of being human, but the danger lies in believing that your feelings should dictate your actions. Feelings are temporary, unstable, influenced by sleep, stress, memory, weather, and countless invisible variables. Yet many people treat them like unquestionable authority. I don't feel like it today. I'm just not motivated. Maybe tomorrow. And without realizing it, they place their progress under the control of something designed to fluctuate. Consider the cost of that mindset. If you only act when you feel inspired, you will move inconsistently. If you move inconsistently, you will progress unpredictably. It will move. And if your progress is unpredictable, frustration becomes inevitable. Not because you lack ability, but because you lack reliability. Discipline is what breaks that cycle. Discipline is not harshness. It is not punishment. It is self-respect expressed through action. Decision to follow through on commitments regardless of emotional weather, because emotions shift, priorities get tested, energy rises and falls, but a disciplined mind does not renegotiate with itself every morning, that simply executes themselves every morning. The principle in your house, the truth is, waiting for motivation is a subtle form of surrender. It hands control to circumstance. It says, I will move when conditions are ideal, but conditions are rarely ideal. Life is noisy, unpredictable, demanding. If excellence required perfect emotional alignment, very little would ever be achieved. Think about the strongest individuals you know, those who consistently perform, consistently improve, consistently advance. Their secret is rarely extraordinary talent. It is the ability to act even when enthusiasm is absent, especially when enthusiasm is absent, because that is when discipline proves its worth. Everyone can move forward when they feel strong. That requires no mastery. In your house, it is no internal authority, but to move forward when comfort pulls you backward, when doubt clouds your mind, when inertia feels persuasive. That is where transformation happens. Discipline turns intention into identity. Every time you act despite resistance, you strengthen something invisible but powerful, your sense of self-command. You teach your mind that excuses do not hold veto power. You demonstrate that action is not conditional upon mood. Over time, this builds a quiet confidence, a stability that does not depend on fleeting emotions. And let's be clear, discipline is not about dramatic effort. It is built in ordinary moments. Getting up when the bed feels warmer than your ambition, beginning the task you would rather postpone, maintaining standards when no one is watching. Small decisions repeated consistently create a form of personal gravity. To be a reliability that carries you through days when motivation disappears. Because motivation, no matter how powerful it feels, is unpredictable. Some days it arrives uninvited. Other days it vanishes without explanation. Discipline does not vanish. How many plans have dissolved not from lack of knowledge, but from lack of execution? How often have feelings quietly overridden decisions you once made with clarity? This is not a judgment. It is an invitation to awareness. Because the moment you stop expecting motivation to carry you, it's the moment you begin developing something far more powerful, the capacity to move under any condition. There is a profound freedom in that stability. A sense that your progress no longer depends on whether you feel like it, but on whether you decide it. And decisions, unlike emotions, are entirely within your control. You do not need to feel fearless to act with courage. You do not need to feel confident to act with conviction. You do not need to feel energized to act with discipline. Action often precedes emotion, not the other way around. Movement creates momentum. Momentum creates energy. Energy reinforces commitment, but none of that begins if you sit idle, waiting for a feeling that may or may not arrive. Long before the world places obstacles in your path, your mind has already drawn the boundaries. Long before difficulty appears in reality, it often appears in thought. That quiet internal dialogue, the one nobody hears but you, is shaping your limits, your confidence, your willingness to act. And whether you realize it or not, that voice is constantly deciding how high you are allowed to rise. Most people underestimate the power of their own thinking. They treat thoughts like passing clouds, harmless and inconsequential, but thoughts are not passive. Trouble in your house. They are Instructions, they influence perception, behavior, energy, and persistence. Be determined what you attempt, what you avoid, what you believe is possible, and what you unconsciously dismiss. If a person repeatedly tells himself something is out of reach, their actions begin to reflect that assumption. The effort becomes hesitant, risk feels unjustified, persistence weakens, not because the goal is impossible, but because the mind has quietly declared it so. The ceiling is rarely imposed by reality first, it is imposed by belief. B, consider how subtle this process is. No dramatic announcement, no visible barrier, just small, recurring patterns of thought. That's not for someone like me. I'm not ready. What if I fail? Maybe I'm just not built for this. Each statement seems minor, even reasonable, yet over time they construct an invisible architecture of limitation in your house. It is and here is the danger: the mind does not easily distinguish between fact and repetition. What you tell yourself consistently begins to feel true, regardless of accuracy. This is why guarding your thinking is not motivational fluff. It is a form of mental discipline, a refusal to let automatic doubt dictate your identity, because doubt is purse. It is evasive. It often sounds rational. It presents itself as caution, realism, practicality. But unchecked, it becomes confinement. Your mind is not merely reacting to the world, it is interpreting it. Two people can face the same challenge and experience entirely different realities. One sees difficulty and concludes inadequacy. The other sees difficulty and recognizes growth. The external situation is identical. The internal narrative is not. That narrative changes everything. When your thoughts default to limitation, your world shrinks. Opportunity appears intimidating instead of inviting. Effort feels failure. Setbacks feel personal. But when your thinking defaults to possibility, the same world transforms. Challenges become temporary. Failures become instructional. Effort becomes investment rather than burden. This is not blind optimism. It is cognitive authority. The ability to choose interpretations that empower rather than weaken. Ask yourself with complete honesty how often your own thinking has slowed you down. How many times hesitation came not from external barriers, but from internal assumptions? How often you argued for your limitations with convincing logic? How frequently you predicted defeat before genuine effort even began? They are daily. And this is where awareness becomes crucial, because you cannot replace a pattern you do not recognize. You cannot challenge a ceiling you believe is part of the sky. The first shift is noticing the tone of your inner dialogue, not judging it, not fighting it, simply observing. Is your mind reinforcing strength or rehearsing doubt? Rehearsing doubt. Is it generating solutions or manufacturing fears? Is it expanding possibilities or narrowing them? The mind left unattended often drifts toward caution and negativity. The personal flaw, it is a survival mechanism, but survival thinking or growth thinking are not the same. One seeks safety, the other seeks expansion. One avoids risk, the other evaluates it. One preserves comfort, the other pursues progress. Growth requires intentional thinking, deliberate thinking that challenges automatic assumptions instead of obeying them. This does not mean denying difficulty. It means refusing to let difficulty define identity. It means replacing "I can't handle this" with "I can learn this," with "I can learn this." Replacing "this is too much" with "this is temporary." Replacing failure would destroy me with "failure would instruct me." Language matters because thought follows language, and thought directs action. The pivotal shift begins internally. Every breakthrough is preceded by a cognitive decision, a refusal to accept the first limiting interpretation offered by fear. This strengthening your thinking is not about reciting hollow affirmation. It is about constructing mental habits aligned with resilience, adaptability, and possibility, because once the mind expands, behavior follows, effort becomes bolder, persistence becomes steadier, challenges become navigable. But none of that occurs if the ceiling remains unquestioned.